I'm Lindsay here with Ben Q at the CES show. Now, joining us today is Justin Wong. He is #1 in the country for fighting games. Justin, we're so happy to have you here today. Now, tell us, how many hours a day do you spend gaming?
It depends, but let's say an average between maybe 2 to 4 hours a day.
2 to 4 hours, and how many years have you been doing this for?
I've been playing fighting games for over 10 years now, so it makes me an old person.
I don't think it makes you an old person. That's nice, so over 10 years, so 2 to 3 hours a day, over 10 years. And now we've heard that you collaborated with Ben Q on this monitor. What are some of the things that you recommended?
Some of the things I recommended was just pretty much the color aspect and how to make the game look exactly how the characters look when it comes to arcade perfect, because mainly when you think about fighting game, it mainly comes from the arcade and also comic books, from like obviously you see like Marvel in the background, and you want to make sure it looks just like how someone would view the game as, oh look, that is Spider-Man, I can recognize these characters. And also I helped a lot in terms of just making sure the gameplay is good, and also people can't complain about, oh, it's laggy or anything, but right now I think it's pretty much perfect.
Pretty much perfect.
Yes.
Well, that's what we like to hear. Well, it was so nice to have you here today, and good luck with your future games. You know, we had a competition here today to see if anyone could beat Justin Wong, and so far, how many years have gone by undefeated?
I'm not too sure, but it's very low, I must say. Very, very, very low.
All right, well, it was so nice to have you here today. Thanks over there.
I'm ready to go when you are.
Roll them out.
Alright, let's roll.
We are going to be moving out in 45 seconds. Let's get to the ground.
Platoon 2, head towards your platoon waypoint.
5 minutes until freedom fries reign over Crux headquarters. Yummy.
Nice job on that quick loadout. Move out to squad waypoint.
Alrighty, platoon 2, grab some armor.
Weaver trying to attack our Sunday.
Command, this is Air. Enemy liberators dispatched.
It needs a shock and awe.
Oh, it's about to get a lot busier in numbers.
Moving out in 5.
Alright, roger that.
3, 2, 1. Move. Go, go, go.
Drop your shield and fire!
Hit Sungream Station from the south side.
Roger that. Better positions. Keep moving into better positions.
Airstrike now, go, go, go.
Command, this is Shadow 3, we've taken Iraq's calls.
Airwing, this is Command. I need you to clear spawns and Bastion.
Request airstrike 7-3.
Platoon 2, I need you guys there now.
Copy that. Be advised, Command, your wife is a terrible driver, so we're kind of slow.
All sections, we have the numbers at the ascent. Just be very aggressive. Get in there. Toss grenades, everything you got. This has been a pretty epic fight.
Sony.
There you go.
And then they're gonna take your photos. They're all taking, look at them take their photos. They worked on the game forever for this photo. This is the whole reason they did it. Oh, look at you guys. Hey, people in the back, how mad are you didn't get shirts? Should have lined up. All right, we'll be on in 1 second. PAX East, how the hell are you? Welcome everyone to the Murder Soul Suspect panel here at PAX. I'm one of your hosts, Greg Miller, alongside a panel of experts ready to take you to the next generation of ghost gaming. First and foremost, these two, they're Airtight Games. They made this game. Give them a round of applause. This is Matt. Wave to them. Good job. All right. This is Dennis. And then, oh, you got some applause out there. You got a few fans. Yeah, okay. Well, good job. No, it's too late. You made your choice. And then over here, ladies and gentlemen, a very special guest who we're not going to talk to yet, so don't get too excited. He's Mark. He's a former FBI criminal profiler and star of the show Killer Instinct, and he's going to talk about a whole bunch of things that are going to give you nightmares, I'm sure. But first, let's talk about the video game, Soul Suspect. Guys, first and foremost, it's a ripoff of Ghost Dad, am I wrong? It's Bill Cosby's finest work, and here you are making a video game out of it, but I didn't forget.
You are far from wrong.
Okay, great. Matt, what is going on in Murdered Soul Suspect?
So, first, I want to tell you guys, this is really humbling. I'm totally impressed that we've got a crowd coming and listening, and I really appreciate it. So, Murdered Soul Suspect is a supernatural mystery thriller that really doesn't have any precedents. We're kind of going out on a plank here and creating something that's really unique in the game space. And
because again, Ghost Dad did it already.
Because Ghost Dad.
Thank you.
Ghost Dad is the only thing that we think about day and night right now. That and Clay. Clay on the wheel. So
see, that was a reference to the movie Ghost with Patrick Swayze.
Don't say Patrick Swayze. We've got a main character whose name is Ronan O'Connor, who's kind of an unorthodox detective who, in his kind of overzealous way, gets killed within the first minutes of the game, and then you end up having to solve the case of your murder throughout the game, as well as bring your killer to justice. A premise that we all felt really, really strong about. So this main character is something that we want to talk about a little bit in terms of visuals. What our job was starting with an IP that didn't have any precedent, and then we had to develop it into something that actually made it what we hope is a really great game. So we're going to talk about a couple of things in regards to that, mainly the visuals. Dennis is the art director on the project, and so the two of us did a lot of collaboration on these elements. We'll talk about the main character, and we're going to talk about the ghost world that this game exists in.
Real quick, by a round of applause, how many of you have played this game? That is embarrassing. It's down at the Square booth. You can go play, right? Pip it, Dennis. Tell them how good it is.
We'll do it. Let me show you a trailer real quick.
Detectives aren't supposed to get bloody knuckles. But I've done a lot of things I wasn't supposed to do. I lived through it all. Beatdowns, the backstabbing, disrespect most people wouldn't see in 10 lifetimes. I never lost a fight. Till now. Hey man, what are you doing? Hey! Move away from the body now! Fuck is this? Hey, did you hear me?
Well, it certainly looks like a happy game. A lot of lightheartedness in that one. So I think number one sign you're a badass, right, is when you get pushed out a window and you pull out your gun to shoot back as you go down. That's how I want to die. Tell me though, what's going on with this Ronin fellow? Because he looks like this, your young brash street punk, not a detective.
No. Yes, he does. Hopefully. When we started out with this game, we really didn't know who our character was going to be. We knew we wanted a ghost for our protagonist, but we didn't know who that ghost was going to be or what his story would be. So we sat down and started thinking through many discussions about who we wanted our character to be. And at a fairly early point in the process, we decided that he was going to be a detective who was solving his own murder. That was something that we all clicked with. But we also knew that that the ghost was really just as important as the main character, and the combination of those two had to be figured out before we would know what kind of a game we were going to be making. So we started with the character at the base core of who the character was and started to work out from there. The ghost element of him was something that we felt was really strong because it has a lot of appeal to people, to a large audience, and almost everybody has a ghost story that they can relate to. So we felt connected almost immediately to that. And then we also were looking at the dangerous part, which is how do you make your own genre of game, which is fundamentally what we were facing. There wasn't a precedent for it.
But is that exciting or terrifying?
It's terrifying.
Okay, good. I mean, at the end of the year, at least you're guaranteed a Game of the Year award because you just created the genre. There's no one else to compete against you.
Yeah, which is the personal terror genre.
You can be the best and worst game in that genre, yeah.
Yeah, that's true. So we were going to start by sort of talking about how the development of some of the key elements of the game, mainly visual elements, around the main character development and then around the ghost world development. And I'm going to start and talk about it a little, sort of from the beginning part, and then Dennis will talk about where he took it over the edge. This is a really early image when we were starting to discuss who we wanted a detective ghost character to be. We knew we wanted him to be tough, but as it turned out, this was starting to get too tough. It drew us into a space that was far too film noir and very caricature, and we knew that we wanted something that people identified with much more. A few things stuck, though, with this character. If you notice, the bullet holes are still with us now. That was a key element that we really liked. And the cigarette, which is sort of this ironic thing that he supposedly could get rid of on death and he ends up being stuck with it no matter what. Even if you'll notice subtly in the game, if the player flicks the cigarette away, it'll reappear back into his fingers. He's totally stuck with it. So we were looking at some of the iconic elements that we wanted to create. So we ended up ending with this character. You notice the bullet holes stayed. We kind of added a bit more of an otherworldly, etheric treatment to them. We kept some of the police paraphernalia, the gun holsters and the straps, the things around his waist, so that you could immediately identify him as a cop. We wanted a little bit of a bad boy touch to him, so we started playing around with tattoos, which also gave him some history that are associated with those tattoos. And we gave him a hat, which gives him a very distinctive profile in the game and helps you to separate him out at all times.
Now you say all that, and that all makes sense. Obviously, it looks cool, hat, sure, who doesn't love a hat? But what was the timeline to get from the first guy we saw who was too hard to this guy?
It was a long time. I would bet we spent at least 6 months developing the character from the beginning. You know, from the guy in the trench coat that you see, actually could have even been more than the other.
So when I came on board at Airtight, I started about 2 years ago, and these guys had created that previous silhouette, this character here. So what I wanted to do was maintain the strong foundation that these guys had started. I didn't want to derail that approach. The very strong silhouette and the bad boy, sort of the bad boy presence. So my job here was to sort of ratchet up the visual presence on the character. I added physics elements. I put geometry where there wasn't. You can see on the left side there's the handcuffs are just textures, and I went in and added geometry for these elements and added like a wallet chain to sort of support that bad boy style. Yeah. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the tattoos.
I'm glad you're going to. This detective shows up, I leave. I don't care if I'm innocent. I'm like, oh no, my wife's fine. She's not missing. Don't worry about it. It's cool.
Yeah, actually, so if you play the game on the show floor, there's a little bit more story that reveals on Ronan and what the tattoos mean and how they apply to him as a character. So I highly recommend you go to the Square booth and check it out.
For real, just go to the booth, everybody, and play the game.
So the original team had, well, actually, let me start with the backstory a little bit. Ronan grew up on the streets. He says that in the trailer, and he literally did. His parents were criminals, and his father liked to celebrate the crimes that he committed with tattoos, which I think is kind of an interesting story. And actually, I'm going to switch over here. The team originally had tribal tattoos on the character, and I didn't think it quite fit with the tone of, I don't want to use the word gypsy, but he sort of had this gypsy-like, he grew up from place to place and encountered, crimes and would celebrate them as well, like his father did on his arms. So when we roll into the intro, if you play the video, you'll see a lot of these tattoos here. What I wanted to show you is we actually had quite a bit more work that we had done. So this concept shows some pieces that are never going to see the light of day again, like the big Liberty piece on his back. We were originally going to show it, but it ended up not showing it going into the game.
Good use of development time.
Happens.
What are tattooed on his feet?
Oh, we didn't do tattoos on
yeah.
his feet. Good question, though.
So really after we figured out who our character was, we began to understand where we were going with the game. And because this is a strong narrative-based game, unabashedly strong narrative-based game, we knew that we had to figure out who the character was before we could move forward on actual game design in a lot of ways. So we started then taking the character and go, all right, what does it mean to be a ghost? What does it look like to be a ghost, and how do we pull that off? We found that the more we pulled out color and detail, it began to lock into place a lot more. And then we also found out that transparency was absolutely key. And as we began to play with transparency, you can notice that the image starts to get pretty contrasty, especially the one on the far right there. And you begin to go into strong highlights and darks, which make it slightly hard to read. And you can also see everything through the character. So we would end up with close-up moments where there'd be somebody standing right behind the character and you couldn't even tell what he was thinking or saying. So we had to kind of back off from that a little bit and start getting a balance between all of these elements that told us who he was and what he was, and actually make it into a character that you could identify with in the game. I'm going to switch to this final.
Keep it, though. So we finally narrowed down to a character that we were able to lock in with, and being a narrative game, we wanted to be able to read and believe the emotions that Ronan was having. So that was critical for the decisions that put us to where we're at right now.
So once we've really got a character that we were happy with, or close to happy with, we dove into the ghost world. And speaking of a lot of work that you would never use in the game, we had quite a bit of it. Originally, this game started, and we're showing you stuff that's it's not going to see anywhere. You're not going to see it outside of this room.
Great use of development time.
Well, there are good reasons for that. This is one of them. This image is great. One of our artists, Yuki Matsuzawa, did this. He's one of the Final Fantasy concept artists that came over and worked with us. And we were beginning to look at our game as a traversal game with a lot of heavy combat.
Actually, I wanted to say, Yuki's the one that drew the bell symbol that's on the shirts that you guys have.
And so we looked at a space that really emphasized traversal and gave you something to do as a ghost, which is a lot of floating around and traversing large spaces. But it was absolutely wrong for the IP. The more we started developing it into an investigation, mature, almost intimate detective story, this stuff felt more like a fantasy world with superhero qualities, and it was just wrong. So we backed off from it. Then we started to look at stuff that was an overlay of the real world and the ghost world. And it began to get really interesting for us, but it was still too fantastic. It still felt like we were entering a totally different fantasy world that we'd have to explain to people from scratch. And we didn't want to do that. And then it wasn't until we got to a point in the development where this image cropped up, and this is another one of Yuki's concept pieces. And as soon as we saw this, the hair went up on our necks because we knew we were closing in on what we needed. This happens to be, since we're here, train station in Boston. And we were thinking East Coast at this time. And there were a number of elements to this image that really got us going. It made sense for the ghost world and the real world to overlap each other. In other words, they were going concurrent with each other, but the ghost world was totally unaware to the living world. Then we had combat, or at least enemy encounters, that were over the top and really spooky, but nobody was aware of it at the same time. It also gave a character the ability to be a protector, or sort of reaching beyond his own personal concerns. If you notice, there's like a little girl there in the foreground that we really liked. We liked the idea of him being engaged with other characters that could more or less needed him. And then we liked the sense that we could get a fantastic quality to the world, but it was still a real world place. All of these things just totally came together in this image.
So, for people who don't know then, how easy is it for Ronin to jump around? Like to go from the real world to the ghost world, or have these different mechanics? Is it all at once? Are they layered on top of each other?
Totally layered. It's an entirely layered experience right now. You move seamlessly through the living world, and they have no idea you're in the space with them. Could you pause it?
Yeah. So, this, like I said, I started Airtight about 2 years ago, and right when I started, the team had delivered this video. And again, this is another piece of content that we'll probably never see the light of day again. But this was what actually got the game greenlit. I wanted to show it because it's actually a lot of the content that we're showing on the floor currently, but it was a good foundation for us to start with. My job was to sort of fill out the world, so we're going to roll into some of the environment stuff. When this was completed, we had a street and we had some apartments, and that was about it as far as what we needed to build to fill out the game. Yeah. So to launch into it, I took screenshots from the game as it was from that video. And on the top there, you can see screenshots that were pulled right from the game. And I had concept artists come in and do some paint over work on those screenshots. Really what this was to give the environment team a clear target as to how to fill out the living world, what makes it feel like it's alive, you know, propping and assets and human scale elements. Once we had a visual target for what we wanted the real world to look like, I went and we had to fill out all these specific locations. So we did concepts of buildings of disparate locations, like there's a church and the church rectory. So some of these places we haven't announced yet, so I'm not going to.
So everybody be quiet, all right? Just keep it under your hat. It's cool.
NDA.
These concepts here give us a pretty clear direction as far as architecture and materials that we want to drive forward for the environment team to execute these locations. This here is actually a hospital that was fully rendered out. It turned out really nice, but tonally it didn't quite feel right, so I had it, steer a little bit more into the world that Murdered Soul Suspects lives in. Here are some concepts that actually once the environment team had built the interiors of the hospital, what I wanted to do is, again, you'll see this quite a bit. I take screenshots of the existing space, and then we do paintovers of it. And on the left, you see the low security ward for this hospital, and on the right, you'll see the high security ward. And this is really to give the environment team will do a first pass, and then they'll go back and polish. So this is actually a better representation of what I was just talking about. On the left, those 3 images are all screenshots straight from the game. And on the right, what we needed to do is give definition for the lighting team to figure out where to take the tone of the space, like what it needs to feel like ultimately, and then also give the environment team clear direction as how we're going to prop the space out, what kind of materials we're going to use, what are the colors of the materials.
This image was also an early one that we did, where we were faced with how to represent the ghost world on top of the living world and be able to get it to read. The ghost world is solid to you as a ghost, and the living world is not. So we needed to have a very clear visual differentiation between those two, or you'd just constantly be floundering. And this was an early iteration that helped prove where we needed to go with it. I look at it now and it's ugly as sin to me. And fortunately, we got the direction out of this, and then we could hand it off to Dennis and say, your problem now.
Yep. So this concept here is probably the most seminal piece of concept, in my opinion, for Murdered Soul Suspect. This sums it up. This gives us clear direction on how we're going to make dusk objects, ghost objects, exist in the same space as the living world. It's pretty simple. There's just a rocking horse sitting in a room, but this is so important for us. The challenge for the team to define the language and figure out the rules to put a ghost object into the real world space. There's no precedence here. There's nothing we can really reference for this, so it was something that we had to create and figure out rules, and it took a long time to get to this point, and this piece here, as soon as I saw it, I was like, boom, we've got it. So we defined some of those rules. You can see that, there's blue, which is sort of the only precedence for ghosts, is bluey.
Everyone knows ghosts are blue.
Yeah. A little bit of vapor, and then here's the critical bit, is that ghost object actually illuminates the space that it's in. Well, through Ronan's eyes, he can see that, and that was very important to define. So once we figured out what the rules were, we needed to figure out how that would look from far away. So the same location, we just moved the rocking horse farther away. What I did add was some sort of supernatural foreshadowing. So if you're coming up to a space and in the distance there's some dusk, you would see it present in this way. Now that we've got our small scale stuff kind of figured out, we wanted to apply it into a large scale. These are all concepts, and when you play the game, you'll see these applied, practically in the game as well. But here's a house on a street with the same rules applied, and it seems to be working pretty good, so we knew we were onto something. This is a screenshot from the final game as it stands. Ultimately, we wanted to build a small East Coast town with a tone of a supernatural mystery. And we wanted to show the natural coexistence between the dusk and the real world.
So, I mean, you went through this, you're showing all the screenshots, how you had to, dress them up for the art team, get stuff in there. Where, remember too, I'm sorry, and the unannounced church and rectory that no one's going to talk about.
Well, no, the other building was unannounced. The church, I think, was.
See, I was throwing them off the trail. Now they're going to talk about the other building. But what are you drawing reference from for all of this? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, he almost looks like a period detective. The town, everything we've seen is like gloomy, but it has this character to it, and there's this darkness to it. I mean, are you looking at film noir? Are you trying to make a modern detective story? Where does it all fall in?
We actually were avoiding noir a little bit because we didn't want to fall into that category.
Again, make your own category, win all the awards.
Pretty much. We experimented a lot. And one of the things, I mean, we actually tried this same scenario in a big city. And immediately you began to sense that it wasn't very creepy. You just didn't get that right ghost vibe that you wanted. And so one of our artists started playing around with a much smaller town that had cobblestone streets, and it was almost European in flavor and effect. And we knew that it was wrong to be in a European city, but we immediately went, holy crap, that is starting to feel spooky. So we started looking around for places that worked with the narrative, that had that same small town, almost like your basement feel to it, but worked in the U.S. for us. And we settled on Salem. This does take place in Salem, Massachusetts.
I like how you're like, oh yeah, this is supposed to be Boston. No claps. Salem. Everyone loves Salem. Fuck Boston. We're all visitors here, but Salem. That's what it's all about. All right. Well, so like we've said, of course, you should go play Murdered Soul Suspect. It's down there. You get to go play it. You get your hands on it. And like I said, this is a very special panel. So we're not going to just jump to straight Q&A. We're going to get there. You're going to have all your ghost questions, like where does Bill Cosby appear in this game? But that's not what we're talking about now. Instead, this gentleman here, this young man is going to stand up. His name, of course, is Mark Safarik. He was an FBI profiler for quite some time. Now he's on the show, his own show, Killer Instinct, where he talks about this kind of horrible, horrible stuff. And he's going to, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, you died and solved your own murder. And oh, he's getting there. Okay, no. He's going to talk about how you'd actually go about solving the case of your own murder. So, Mark, please come to the stage.
Thank you. All right, excellent. So here's the deal, right? So you are playing this game, Murdered Soul Suspect. You have to solve the murder. I mean, that's what I do. I was an FBI profiler, well, 23 years in the FBI, almost 13 years in the behavioral analysis unit, the profiling unit. So I want to give you some insight into the way we really look at these crimes, what we really have to do. What?
One more, there's a video.
All right.
We look into the crimes by looking at video game trailers.
So I'm doing this for real, right? So I have a show, Killer Instinct, in which it's now running on Biography Channel in the afternoons. But those are my cases. They're serial murder cases, mass murder cases. They're cases where I'm using my abilities to help the police solve the case, or I'm testifying in the case to bring the case to fruition. They're complex cases, and that's what you're faced with here. This is what the team was faced with. How do you deal with evidence? How do you deal with forensics? How do you deal with interviews? And it's not only shows like Killer Instinct, but I also consult for CSI Las Vegas and for Bones, because those kinds of shows are also interested in not just the forensics, but behaviorally, what are serial killers doing? What are murderers doing? What are sexual rapists doing? And so they're looking for integrating the behavior and the forensics. And there's my show, Killer Instinct. I have to plug it. So here's the thing. When I am looking at a complex crime, whether it's a single homicide or multiple homicides, every crime scene tells a story. I've got to figure out what that story is. It has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And all of the things have to make sense. It's what I call the crime flow. So I'm studying all the behavioral, forensic aspects to the crime, what I call the psychopathology of the crime. Most crimes do not lend themselves to being behaviorally assessed. Drive-by shootings, drug killings, the more complex types of cases, something like you're going to be seeing in this game, is the type of murder that is the cases that I would be working on. So the analysis really is a two-part process. First, I have to analyze the crime dynamics. I do that from all of the crime information, the crime scene reports, witness reports, crime scene photographs, autopsy photographs, the autopsy protocol. I look at all of that information, and I'm trying to pull out things like victimology. So I'm not going to read this slide to you, but victimology is a really key piece. Understanding why this particular person became the victim of a homicide on this day. Why wasn't it me or you? Why wasn't it last week? Or why isn't it next week? Why this time of day? Why this day? So victimology, these are all components to victimology that are very important to help me understand what I'm looking for, the type of offender that we're dealing with. Risk level is another really key piece. Risk level is like a coin. It has two sides. It has the victim side and it has the offender side. Assigning risk really becomes important in understanding this dynamic. How much risk was the victim at? If I were to ask you, tell me about high-risk victims, you might say prostitutes, drug dealers, criminals. You'd be right about that. And then most of you in here are probably low risk. So how much risk is the victim at, and how much risk does the offender have to take to commit the crime? So I'm always considering that. Kelly, this is just a case. Kelly Bordeaux was an Army, was in the military in North Carolina. She's probably a low-risk victim, but on this one particular night, she was highly intoxicated. She went home with the wrong guy. Probably wouldn't happen on a normal night, but she situationally elevated her risk, and she ended up being raped and murdered. Also, these are just more pieces of the victimology piece that I'm looking for. So it isn't like, well, tell me about the victim. Oh, she was really nice. You know, everybody liked her. She had 3 kids, and you know, the neighborhood loved her. That's not what we're looking for. We're looking for all of the details about their life. You've probably heard the term a motiveless crime. There are no motiveless crimes, but in a crime that seems like it has no motive, you go to victimology as one of the key pieces. Then there's other things that I'm looking at, and I won't go into them in detail, but cause of death, MO and ritual, which I'll mention briefly at the end, the modus operandi and their ritual or need-driven behavior, post-mortem activity, what's the motive for the crime or multiple motives? There's a lot of planning and organization. How much control did the offender have? How did he get into the crime? How did he get out? What did he do with the body? And what other things is he doing at the crime scene? These are all pieces that I'm looking at when I'm looking at either a single murder or a multiple murder serial case. And then injury components. I have published several articles on injury research. But injury, what are the severities of the injuries? And this is kind of important in this game. Number of injuries, location of the injuries. Are they post-mortem, ante-mortem, and what is the weapon? Where did the weapon come from? Whose weapon is it? Where did it go afterwards? Did the offender bring it, or did he leave it at the crime scene? So these are all little things that you want to think about. And then the second part of this two-part process is really the interpretation. And I know how to interpret these because you know, I have had a lot of training in lots of different areas, from forensic pathology to blood spatter analysis. And I have stayed current in the research literature, and I do research myself, and I've looked at thousands of homicide cases. So I have the experience of looking at these types of things. Cognitive bias is really an important piece in understanding how we look at crime scenes. Our senses are imperfect. How we interpret crimes is based on a lot of factors. We're influenced more by what we expect to see rather than what we actually observe at crime scenes or really in life. And this is based on our own personality and our experience. What we remember about a crime, and I've seen this with homicide detectives all the time, what we remember depends on what we believe. So, quickly, I'm going to give you a crime scene problem, right? You're going to look at this crime, and it's going to be an interesting experiment. So here's the thing. I'm going to give you one slide. The slide is going to be the crime. It's 4 lines of text. What I want you to do is to count the number of Fs, the number of the letter Fs in this crime scene. I'm going to give you about 8 or 9 seconds to look at it. Okay. You're finished. You're all bright, intelligent people. I want you to look around. How many people saw 2 Fs by a show of hands? 2 Fs. Not one person. Okay, see, there's one guy over there going, well, okay, it's only me? No, I didn't see 2. So there's a couple people who saw 2. How about 3? Okay, look around. Look around. Look at how many people have seen 3 Fs. 4. See? A little less, but still a lot. 5. Okay. A lot, but less than 4. 6. Oh, now we're down to about 5 or 6 people. 7. My question...
Murderer. That's the one.
My question to you is why? If you're all looking at the same thing, why are you seeing different things? And that's the thing in a crime scene. When detectives tell me about their crime, I'm saying, you know, wait a minute. You know, I have to look at your crime because you're going to tell me what you think is important. And all of you just looked at this crime scene, and you're all coming up with different variables. There are actually 6 Fs in this crime scene. It's a simple crime scene, but the object is that you all can see that you're not all seeing the same thing when you're looking at the same crime. And this is another simple experiment, and I'm not going to belabor it because I don't have a lot of time. Matt and Dennis took some of my time. Thanks very much. But so when you see this, what do you see when you first look at this? You see dots, but what do you see? You see a box, right? And that's the problem. Because when I tell you, I want you to connect all 9 dots with 4 straight lines without lifting your pen, it's actually impossible to do it. You cannot do it inside the box. And so if you, as a detective, if you're looking at something, if you've already eliminated something because you're already inside the box, you're not going to be able to solve the crime. So what you have to do is you have to go outside the box. You have to think outside the box. I know it sounds stupid, but that's what you have to do. And that's what I do when I look at crime scenes, complex crimes. What's going on here? So here are a couple of things that I'm always thinking about. What is possible versus what is probable? What is consistent in this crime with what is inconsistent? Expected versus excessive, and imposition versus exposition. So the first one, possible versus probable. Now, this is from 2012. We found water on Mars, right? We have found water. So my question to you is, if there's water on Mars, could there be life on Mars? I'm just asking if it's possible. Yes, there could be life on Mars. Okay, if it's possible there's life on Mars, is it possible that that life form has come down to Earth at some point in time? I'm just asking if it's possible. Yes, of course, right. If it's possible that that life form came down to Earth, is it possible that that alien life form came down to Florida and murdered Kaylee Anthony, the little 2-year-old girl? Is that possible? No, it's not possible, right? We know what happened there. The problem is we cannot deal with what is possible in crime. We can only deal with what is probable, what is likely, right? So, I mean, it's possible if I buy a Powerball ticket, I'm going to win. It's possible, but frankly, the odds say that it's so far from possible that it's really impossible to win. Sherlock Holmes, in the Scandal in Bohemia, said, "It is a capital mistake to theorize before one has data. Insensibly, one begins to twist facts to suit theories instead of theories to suit facts." So when you are looking at this game, don't think you know. Don't jump in and already develop the theory. Then once you have the theory, try to fit the facts to the theory. Expose the facts. Figure out what you have first. Once you have the data, or once you have the facts, then you can develop the theory. That's how we solve crimes. That's how it helps us along. I want to finish with a couple of things. MO and ritual. MO, modus operandi. What is MO? I think if I asked each one of you, you could probably sort of articulate it, but it's a difficult concept. Here's what MO is. MO is behavior which the offender perceives, not is, but perceives as necessary to successfully complete the crime. This is what makes him a successful killer. It protects his identity, it helps him get away, and it ensures the success of the crime. So when I'm looking at behavior in the crime scene, I'm asking myself the question, does this ensure the success, help him get away, or protect his identity? There's something else that we're looking at, and that is called ritual. Ritual is need-driven behavior. So in this case, we have this bell. I don't know what it means. I mean, they've not clued me in. I don't have any idea. I really can keep a secret. I was in the FBI for 23 years. But ritual is need-driven behavior, and we see ritual behavior in many murder cases, especially in serial murder cases. There are things that the offender has to do to complete the crime. So think about that when you are the detective trying to solve this crime. What is he doing that makes him a successful killer? And what are the things that he's doing that are really unnecessary for being successful that way? And I think if you do that, if you try to apply some of these, just a couple of these principles as you are traversing this game as the detective and looking at other murders, that perhaps you'll just have a little bit of a leg up on somebody else. But really, it's a similar concept. And the game developers are understanding that they have to do it because we're all a lot more educated now, from television shows, from crime dramas, from the CSIs. We know about forensics, and we're getting to know about behavior. Thanks a lot, guys.
Holy crap, right? Man, we thought we were just going to talk about video games. We got 2 mics in the audience. Let's line up for questions about murdered soul suspect. I'll start. You talked about Ronan, right? And you're making this character, and you want him to be this bad boy, but be this, you know, driven guy and have this backstory. How hard is that, right? How hard is it just to be like, oh, it's Nathan Drake in a hat? You know what I mean? Like you want to make something, right, that isn't just every, you know, protagonist from every other video game.
You're on to us. We have an amazing writer, and his father is a policeman as well, so he had some inside info into this whole process. But it was an extraordinarily difficult thing to write a very layered mystery story that you could continue to reveal and reveal and reveal and never know what was going on until the last reveal. I think he did an amazing job with it. I'm really happy with it. I keep telling people that I challenge anybody to forensically guess what is going on until the final moments.
They're laying down the challenge for you.
Yeah, we did. We laid it.
All right, gentleman here in the St. Louis Cardinals jacket.
Let's say, hypothetically, I work at a chain in St. Louis that 9 out of 10 people in this room hate. Let's say that the customer base that I have doesn't do research. They don't know what PAX is. They don't know what IGN is. Sorry, Greg, because they don't have internet. So if the only research they'll do is they'll ask me, what is this game? And if I break it down as simply as I can and try to say something like, well, it's like Alan Wake and Beyond Two Souls had a baby, and then go into detail from there, is that okay with you guys? Or what would be your advice to describe it better, because it is prime pre-order season for this game?
Don't forget Rosemary's Baby. It's Rosemary's Baby meets Alan Wake. Actually, being in the company of those 2 games is awesome, because I admire both games, and there are elements that definitely overlap with what we're doing. But we are a game that has kind of extended itself into a space that didn't exist before. So we're a supernatural investigation thriller, and with an emphasis on investigation, and where you are a character that has to solve your own murder.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Sir.
So this sounds really interesting, and I love the idea of the detective story, but is it going to be possible to not win this game? If I don't track the clues, if I don't look at the rituals, can I fail?
No. We actually don't punish you for being a really bad detective. We just reward you for being a really good one.
Is it sad that I'm disappointed by that? Like, I want the challenge in the game. I don't.
Oh,
want to
there's
have to step-
definitely challenge, and you'll see it when you have to sort through the clues. But we discovered that if you try and treat it like an actual crime investigation, you don't know what to do. You don't know what the hell to do in that situation. And there's a lot of expertise that goes into, and a lot of patience that goes into figuring out a true crime scene. And we personally didn't have the patience to do it. So we sort of subtly guide you and help you to understand ways of thinking about the clues that you come across so that you can come to those conclusions, but we don't give you the conclusion. You have to come to them yourself.
Thank you.
So, first of all, really cool concept. I played it on the floor, and I've actually been to Salem, Massachusetts. And thanks. And one of the things I noticed on the cop car is the cop logo for the police department of Salem is a silhouette of a witch. I didn't notice that detail in the game. Is there a reason for that?
This is a fictional Salem. So we based it loosely on the real Salem. But it's not a one-to-one replica.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Gentleman in the tie, the floor is yours.
All right, it's just one quick thing that I noticed. This game has been compared to Die Hard, and you're basically using sort of like the ending plot, spoiler alert, of The Sixth Sense. Was this game designed for Bruce Willis?
If he would have done it, we would have done it with him, for sure.
That would have been a no-brainer.
All right, thanks.
Sir.
This game looks awesome. I just have a couple quick logistical questions in terms of replayability. Are there other parts of the game that we can do? Are there other, collective things or multiplayer? Like, how many sort of hours do you expect us to put into this game?
Yeah, primarily the game is a narrative experience, so there is an arc. But there's also side quests and collectibles that fill out the world and fill out all the players that are in the experience holistically. What did we say? With everything in there, it's 10 to 15 hours if you wanted to collect all the collectibles and do all the side quests.
Right. Thank you.
Combo breaker.
Hey guys, one thing I was wondering about is, I always love games that really let me have to think things through, but I kind of get the impression from this game that it will have that, but being that I'm a ghost detective now, I'm guessing I'm going to have some supernatural abilities as well. So how did you strike that balance between true investigation and supernatural powers?
No, you can take this
one. No fair. So the investigation part that's sort of human is really making sense of the clues. But the way you uncover the clues is because you can't physically interact with just about anything in the world. It uses a lot of techniques and abilities that you learn as you go along. So you're a newbie ghost in this world. You don't know what to do. You don't know how to do it. There are some other ghosts that can give you a little bit of advice and help guide you along. And as you go through, you begin to learn things like how to eavesdrop on people, how to mind read, how to influence them, and when you influence them, you can kind of subtly manipulate them to do what you need them to do. And then, so possession is one of the primary mechanics for investigation in the game. Then there are a number of other ways of uncovering information that is invisible to you as a human, as a normal human. For example, I think, actually you didn't see it in the material that we showed you, but you'll see it if you play it on the floor. There's a thing called a memory residue, which is like a residue of a nasty event that happened in the past or a very important event that's related to the crime, that if you interact with it and sort of figure out what it's about, you can get this psychic flash of something that happened in the past. Incredibly valuable, and it's kind of cinematic. I really like it.
Very cool. Thank you, guys. Beyond!
Beyond! Beyond! It's kind of the magic word, sorry.
How's it going, guys? Game looks fantastic. I can't wait for it to come out. A couple questions. First is, did you know from the get-go that you want to do like a third-person game, or did you play with genres, first-person, fixed camera, stuff like that? Also, did you find a balance between fighting or like fighting sequences, or more story-driven, like games like Heavy Rain or something like that?
Why don't you answer the third?
Which part?
The third person.
Oh, okay. No, we knew right away that we wanted a third-person game, and the reason is because this is a game that is very story-driven, and it's extremely narrative, and in a first-person game, you generally project everything onto your character, and we wanted to create a character who had a very specific story to tell. So we chose that right away, and you were gonna.
Yeah, the primary experience for this game is to be an investigation game, so we didn't really want to lean too heavily on combat. So there are encounters that you have, and you can strategy your way around them, or you can face them head on, and we give you tools to be able to decide how you want to approach it. So it's a soft touch, but we don't get too heavy in the combat at all.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you.
So you told us a lot about our main character, Rowan, but what are some of the other characters in the game who are going to add to the plot and experience?
Ooh, I don't know if we want to tell about those. So I'll just say that every character in the game is a potential suspect. And as you go along and play the game, you're going to be getting a lot of subtle clues, both through the narrative and through your investigation, that will point you one way or the other. And so it really pays to pay attention to the characters that you're encountering, and it makes those encounters really interesting because they might be more involved than you think they are. Specific characters, I guess we've shown. I don't want to talk about any that you haven't seen yet, but you saw a couple of the cops on the street. Those guys are key characters in the game. You saw
a residue of joy.
You saw a residue. There's a kind of a almost street kid that you encounter in the game that is an important character too, that is very important to both your ability to manipulate the world and to understand it.
Sir? So the one question I have in mind is this going to be like an open world game or a very linear game? Or is it just going to be like a hub world that leads to like different missions? Because if there's one thing that really irks me when I just don't know like what type of game it is.
It's a little bit hubbish. It's and a little bit open.
It's hubbish.
Yeah, you can backtrack, and since there's a ton of optional content, you can actually backtrack and go back to locations you'd previously visited. The story itself progresses fairly linearly, but there's a lot of rich content to help fill out that story, and it's worth going back and doing.
All right, cool.
This young gentleman who never comes to PAX East.
I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself, but being that you're a detective and you're solving your own murder, is the game set up in a way where it could potentially be a sequel or future DLC that you can solve other crimes?
I would say that we're looking at this game as an IP about being a ghost. So, yes, any title, if you wanted to go back and remake something with it and carry that character forward, you could do it. Sometimes it's a stretch. You've seen that happen in a number of movies. This is not specifically set up for sequelization. In other words, it has a very definitive ending to it, but it would be very easy for us to either continue with this character as a game or to make other games around ghosts that were in a similar vein.
Ghost Dad 2?
Ghost Dad 3, hopefully.
And Beyond.
Beyond.
Was totally going to do that. So I think this is a really cool concept that's kind of branching out
the Square Enix library a little bit, and I just had a quick question for you guys. Was this your concept that you kind of brought to the table and were like, hey guys, here's our game, let's make it? Or did they come to you and say, hey, this is kind of what we want, do you have ideas?
It's more like the second. Actually, we started a dialogue with Square, God, years ago, and it was
when
a
they
very...
were still Squaresoft?
I missed that, sorry.
Was it when they were still Squaresoft?
I don't know. No, it was not.
No, that was a long time ago. You guys wasted a lot of development time making your pretty pictures, but it wasn't that long ago.
And we actually, there was an exchange of ideas. We said, we've got a few ideas, here they are. They said, we've got a few ideas, and we listened. And the idea of making a Ghost game, the fundamental idea of making a Ghost game was the creative director from Square's brainchild, Yosuke, and Shiokawa-san. He was really interested in making a Ghost game, but we didn't know at that time what that meant. All we knew that you were going to be a ghost and you were going to do something. And we developed it from there together.
Cool. And just a secondary question off of that real quick. How receptive were they to your ideas?
Say that one more time.
At the table when you guys were discussing the game, how receptive were they to your ideas?
Oh, it was a very collaborative process. We listened back and forth constantly.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Beyond. Purple tie.
Is it necessary to confront the demons in order to beat the game, or can you just solve the human crime?
I actually at two today we did a Twitch run through, and I bypassed the demons to just get through the gameplay. So you can skirt around them using the tools that we provide for you.
And you can beat the game without confronting them all.
But it gets more difficult as things go along.
It does get challenging.
Everybody's got to fight demons.
That's right. It's just a metaphor.
Okay, so with crime scene investigation, my mind immediately goes to LA Noire, and I was wondering how, comparatively speaking, Sole Suspect sort of stacks up against the like evidence collection and interaction with suspects.
For the most part, in LA Noire, you went around and you just collected pieces until you found, I mean, you kind of ran over everything until you found the one thing that you needed to find, and then you were done with that investigation. We didn't really, I mean, they did a good job with the game. I'm not disparaging it, but that's not what we wanted to do. We wanted you to think about the evidence that you were finding in wherever it existed and make sense of it, as opposed to just being given the answer. So really in this game, once you've collected the evidence, you have to evaluate it and make sense of it, piece it together, and then see if you're right. So it's actually a very different logical process than what LA Noire had.
Awesome, thank you guys.
Sure.
Miss.
Hi, two questions. Regarding the tattoos, and you guys kind of explain it and you see it when you play the demo downstairs. Do you guys go in more depth with those tattoos, like flashbacks about what, every single aspect of it? And one thing, and I know this might be the bad question to ask, with the killer and that aspect of that, did you guys base it off of, cases that he had, or did you guys kind of go and say, well, we think this is the way he should go, and kind of bounce ideas after each other and like kind of more collaborative effort?
Well, regarding the tattoos, we don't go into every single tattoo and show like why he got each one, but in the intro part, when you play on the show floor, it does walk through like a big bulk of them.
Right.
But really all that is character development. We're just trying to show you who he is and establish what kind of person he is and give a little bit of backstory to him. The second question, I'm not sure if we can answer that. I didn't quite.
Well, yeah, that one's a tough one to answer because a lot of that you have to uncover in the gameplay itself. Narratively, it was there was a lot of iteration. We threw a lot out, we threw a lot in, and then threw it back out. So we ended up with a process of removal and adding that took place over several years, actually, to get to that point, yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry, she has the honor of being the final question, but I have good news, ladies and gentlemen. Because you were dedicated and stayed till the very end. They didn't want me to say this when there was a bunch of people here, but you dedicated people. Tomorrow there's a special event centered around Murdered Soul Suspect. You got to go to the Square Enix booth and sign up for it. That's all I'm allowed to say. The game comes out June 3rd. Give it up for your panel, Murdered Soul Suspect. Thanks.